Okay, we are now live and I am admitting everyone. Once everyone gets in, I'll let you know, Audrey.
Okay, thank you.
While we're doing that, Kevin or Ruben, could we confirm how many people we have on 1509 El Camino?
In terms of commissioners or?
Yeah, we have a possible recusal issue.
Okay, if it's John, we checked the distance. He is beyond 500 feet.
Okay. How much beyond?
628 feet, I believe.
Okay. So we'll just want to make a record because it's within the 1,000-foot donut that that's the case. So when we get to that, let me know and
okay.
We'll say something.
Yeah, 628.
Okay, folks, we are live. Go ahead, Audrey.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order at 7:09 p.m. Welcome to the Monday, August 24th, 2020 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. As a courtesy during the proceedings, we ask that you place yourselves on mute, as sound transfers easily and can be disruptive. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails throughout the evening, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. You may also submit your comment using chat in Zoom by clicking on the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. Staff will then read the comment at the appropriate time. Lastly, you may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the participant button located at the bottom of your screen, then click raise your hand. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom meeting by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. So I'm going to move on to agenda item number 2, roll call. The record should note that all members, 7 members of our commissioners are present this evening. Agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. We have meeting minutes to review and approve from the August 10th regular Planning Commission meeting. Are there any comments, changes, or discussions regarding these August 10th minutes? If not, I move we pass the minutes as they were actually revised, and I'm moving that we pass the minutes as revised. Can I have a second? So thank you. We have a motion by myself, Commissioner Say, seconded by Commissioner Camarado. Any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair, I missed that meeting, so I will not be voting. I'll recuse on the vote. Okay,
thank you. That was Commissioner Loftus?
That's right.
Okay. So may we have a roll call vote, please? Commissioner Camarado?
Aye.
Commissioner Gall?
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid?
Aye.
Commissioner Terrones?
Aye.
And Commissioner Say, myself, aye. So motion passes 6-0-1-0. Moving on to agenda item number 4, approval of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
No changes to the agenda.
Thank you. Can we take this one slide off the screen at this time? Okay, thank you. And then I believe we may have a couple of recusals for some projects. I have noted Commissioner Gall recusing from item 8A772 Walnut. And Commissioner Camarado is recusing from item 9A 1249 Laguna Avenue. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Are there any other recusals? All right. Moving on to agenda item number 5, public comments non-agenda. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for the Planning Commission agenda, for a future Planning Commission agenda, may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, which is the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of the time. And I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers, depending on the item. Please speak clearly into your microphone. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on an item that is not on our agenda this evening? I don't see any. Unless something's come in by email, I will.
So yeah, Madam Chair, no public comments through email or through chat.
Okay, thank you. So then we will move on to agenda item number 6, which is study items, for which we have none this evening. Moving on to agenda item number 7, the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless separate discussion and/or action is requested by the applicant, a member of the public, or a commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. We have 2 items on the consent calendar, 137 Costa Rica Avenue and 912 Morel Avenue. Would any member of the public or the applicant like to pull this item for discussion? These items, or any one of these items? Any planning commissioners? Seeing none.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes.
Commissioner Loftus, just as a matter of record, these 2 items were on the August 10th meeting that I missed, but I did visit both of the sites and I did watch the videos, so I will vote.
Great, thank you for clarifying that, Commissioner Loftus. I will make a motion to approve these 2 consent items. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by myself, Commissioner Say, seconded by Commissioner Terrones. Is there any discussion on the motion? May we please have a roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Terrones,
Aye.
and Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by the appeals fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations on both projects. Moving on to agenda item number 8, regular action items. We have agenda item 8A 772 Walnut Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? I will note that I spoke to the homeowner this afternoon on the project.
Madam Chair, I also had a conversation with the homeowner when I visited the property, just so that I could get a closer visit and tour of the project area.
Thank you. And that's the same description of my visit.
Madam Chair, I'll be recusing as I have a business relationship with the property owner.
Thank you. All right, so let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes. Here we go. An application for design review and front setback variance for a first and second story addition to an existing single-family dwelling at 772 Walnut Avenue was approved by the Planning Commission in 2018, and construction of the project was completed in December 2019. Due to the poor condition of the existing garage, the applicant is proposing to rebuild the existing attached garage in the same location and with the same footprint as the existing garage. With the proposed project, the floor area will remain the same as no additional square footage is being added. The existing left side setback to the attached garage is non-conforming at 11 inches from the property line. The applicant is requesting a left side setback variance to allow the new attached garage to be built in the same location as the existing attached garage. The reconstruction of the garage is in conjunction with the anticipated construction of a new accessory dwelling unit, or ADU. Per state law, ADUs are not subject to Planning Commission review, so is not included in this application. So in summary, the application before the Planning Commission tonight is to reconstruct the existing attached garage. This requires design review for an attached garage, special permit for an attached garage, and left side setback variance for the new attached garage at 11 inches where 4 feet is required. I'll note that there were some corrections to the plans that were received midday today. Those were emailed to planning commissioners electronically. And if there are questions about those plans or others related to the application, I'm available. Then the applicant is also available to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I have a quick question that I think I have a little confusion on, and for some reason I missed seeing the email this afternoon, so I apologize for that. So the existing setback is 11 inches, but the left side of the garage seems to have been built at an angle. So is the 11 inches the dimension that's closest to the fence, and then there are portions of the garage that are further away from the fence?
Yes. And Ruben, I don't know if do we have a site plan that we can look at? So yeah, typically we express the setback as the closest point. So you'll see that the 11 inches is that point right closest at the front of the property line. And then because it is at the angle as you described, that setback does increase as the building goes further back. So 11 inches is the shortest part of the setback, or the closest it gets to the property line.
Hi, I'd just like to add to this.
Actually,
for the project.
Sorry, let us first just
Planning Commission questioning.
Oh, sorry.
We'll have an opportunity for you to speak shortly.
Just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, so I'll go with that for now. Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Toronis?
just my reading of the clarification that we received in terms of the dimensions that have been clarified is that 11-inch dimension is not correct. I believe it's 1'6" at the front of the garage, and then it widens out as it moves towards the rear.
Yeah, from I think what I recall of what I saw, it seemed that the rear part of the garage is closer to the property line than the front of the garage.
I'm talking about the proposed. Sorry.
Oh, so can you repeat what you said, Commissioner Toronis?
Yeah, as this drawing is now showing that we're seeing on screen, it's proposed to be 1'6" at the front and then widening as it moves towards the back.
Okay.
So we can ask a clarification for the architect. I apologize. I had my notes written this morning. So if that is part of the changes we got on the new plans, I regret not getting that in my presentation, but we can get clarification when it's the time for the architect to speak.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name, anything else you'd like to add about your project?
My name is Jessica Sin. I'm the architect for the project. We've been working on the main house, like you said, since 2018 with the Planning Commission and the Shaws, the homeowners. And you know, and here we are today to look at the garage and the ADU. The ADU has already been approved before, and the garage in itself is dilapidated and falling apart. So we're requesting a new garage. And just to clarify some of the remarks from previous was that we are modifying that wall that is almost parallel, I would say, to that side property line that you are seeing on the screen. It is just to increase the maneuverability of a vehicle into the garage and accessibility inside the garage. So we are proposing it to be wider at about 1'6" on that side. And we are proposing to reduce that width at the back of the garage by a similar amount so that the net gain of square footage is 0 square footage there. And in preparing these plans, there was an error on one of the dimensions, and I apologize for that to have caused any confusion there. And I hope you received those revised drawings today with the clarifications on those dimensions on plans and elevations. Tonight, we also have the homeowners here with us, Vivek and Pooja Shah, and they would like to also speak towards this proposal as well.
Hi there. Thank you. Thanks everyone on the Planning Commission. Appreciate everything. We're very fortunate to be in our home as it relates to this project in particular. As the architect mentioned, and I think as you're all aware, we're essentially hoping to just redo an existing structure with the garage. We have, for those of you that are familiar with Walnut Street, it's a pretty narrow street with a lot of cars that park on the street. And we are trying to avoid the congestion in the street. And we have this garage, which is in its existing structure, but it is dilapidated. It's an eyesore, frankly, for ourselves, our neighbors. It's just in really poor condition. And it's also not functional in that we cannot fit our car and put our kids in and out of the car. And so all we're attempting to do is maintain the same square footage as Jessica said. So we don't want any square footage increase, but because of the way the current structure is shaped, it basically is very difficult to fit the car into the garage and have space to exit and enter. But the back side of the garage is a bit wider and the front side is narrow. So what we were hoping to do is basically, per the plans, expand the front side just so it's easier to enter, but then reduce the rear of the garage by the same amount so that we can actually use the garage. And our intention and plan is to park the vehicle in the garage, reduce street congestion, and the door from the garage opens into our mudroom into the house. And so for our two kids, our older one that goes to McKinley, we just want it to be accessible, functional, without too much, hassle and headache. That's the objective.
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant? So I'm sorry that I'm the one sounding so confused this evening about this project. So Vivek, I know we had a chance to look at your garage together. That very front left corner of the garage, you explained to me, is widening. So getting closer to the property line. So is that the correct understanding here, I guess, Jessica, that the front left corner of the garage is not staying in its existing location, but actually moving closer to the fence?
That's correct.
And then the resulting dimension from the fence is going to be 11
roughly 1'6".
1'6" from the fence?
From the property line to the corner of the garage.
Okay, that will be the final location. So currently it is more like, I saw a dimension somewhere that said 2'8". Is that what the
Yeah,
current?
that was the dimension that was not correct, is actually 3'1".
So the current location is 3'1" from the property line, and you're gonna move it closer, so it becomes 1'6".
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, did you look at any options that didn't require a variance? There looks like there's a lot of space on that side yard there.
It was our understanding that we needed to do the variance because the existing garage already sat inside the setback line. And so anything we needed to do to reconstruct the garage would require a variance.
Well, but you could move the garage into a different location, like, for example, further forward. I mean, I'm just looking at it from the street, and it looks like you could put it even wider garage there and still meet the setback requirements, or move it further back, for example.
Vivek, did you want to speak to that? Because I think the idea was to keep the pattern of the garages towards the rear of the properties like it is on for the rest of the street. And as you can see in this drawing here, is that there is a parking space that's uncovered, that's in front of it. So would you be proposing it in that location and pushing this proposed parking space further forward?
I'm not proposing anything. I'm just asking if you looked at any other option that didn't
Sure. Yeah.
That went beyond putting it back in the same place, but larger.
Yep. So we did. So the one thought was obviously as many Burlingame homes have, where the garage is put in the rear of the lot, I guess, which did not, it didn't really suit given our structure and all the sort of the existing layout of the house and the way that the yard and everything is all completed. And so that didn't seem functional, and it would be really efficient use of space. Your question on moving it forward, we've thought about that, but we figured it would be more efficient and simple to basically come in with just redoing the existing structure without a major shift in the position. And so that's why we presented this as kind of redoing an existing structure. And then also the way the house is set up, all of the, I think you can kind of see, but there's like an AC condenser unit and wiring that is by the front, and so that may interfere. And then there's a mud room in the like that attaches to the garage. So we explored both of those options at a very high level, but we thought anyways and hoped that this was the easiest, most simple way to do it, to just redo it in its existing position that sort of works functionally, with hopefully not much trouble.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions for the applicant? Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Madam Chair, I do have one written correspondence, so we could start by myself reading that, and then we can move to members of the public after that.
Thank you.
This is correspondence signed by Christopher David Zwingle and Dina Ann Zwingle. We are Christopher and Dina Zwingle, trustees of the Zwingle Living Trust, owner of record of 774 Walnut Avenue, the property immediately north of and adjacent to the applicant property. We have resided at this address continuously since May 1996. In the matter of the current application for design review, special permit, and side setback variance, we oppose any reduction of the regulatory setback requirement. Reduction of setback defeats the intent of regulation and permanently encroaches upon the enjoyment of our property. It must be noted that at the time of the applicant's purchase of the property, an attached garage existed of sufficient dimension to accommodate an automobile. The applicants consciously elected to build features that reduce the area available for a garage. we request that the commission deny the application. Signed, the Zwingle Living Trust, Christopher David Zwingle and Dina Ann Zwingle, trustees. We do not have any other emails or chat.
Okay, and is anybody in the public interested in speaking on this item? Seeing that the answer is no, I'm going to close the public hearing. And commissioners, do you have anybody have any comments? Commissioner Toronis?
Yeah, thank you. Well, in looking at the plans and looking at the various different options, I had a similar thought as Commissioner Sargent. You know, I thought about the idea of pushing the garage forward, but the problem that I could see with that solution is there's a bump out on the playroom on that side of the driveway that would probably cause the garage to have to shift somewhat in order to be able to maneuver into it. And secondly, the garage structure in that location would effectively cut off windows to the adjacent bathroom and kitchen areas on that side of the house. So in looking at what's being requested, you know, I can understand the special permit request for the attached garage. It fits with the pattern along that side of the street in the abundance of attached garages. From a design standpoint, the architecture, you know, is similar to what's existing. The cladding and the finishes would be similar to what's existing there. So then it comes down to the variance. And in terms of the possible locations for a garage, and in the spirit of trying to create a garage that gets cars off of the street, particularly in that neighborhood, we've had various applications that have come before us over the years, and various neighbors that have reminded us that is a narrow street, difficult to park, and encouraged us to do anything we could to support getting cars off the street. So along those lines, I could find support for the variance based on the conditions, the angle of the house as it sits on the property as being fairly unique, and a reconstruction in the location of the existing that on balance ends up creating less width towards that front corner, but greater width for maintaining that side of the garage in the future, which I often look at when garages are close to a property line. So I can support the application the way that it's presented.
Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I can't support the application, and I'll tell you why. Because the applicant is asking us to approve a worsening of an existing condition, and this condition is one that I live with in my location, and it's a never-ending source of trouble for me. And that is, I have a neighbor's garage 6 inches from the property line, right in the middle of my property line, along our joint property line. And it, you know, it was an accommodation back in the 70s to some special condition. And, you know, it should never have happened. And I have to live with it, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I don't think it's fair when you've got a backyard the size of this backyard to ask the commission to make special accommodation and the neighbors to live with the situation that we create by giving special accommodation into the future. So I can't support the project.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I have discomfort with this application for two reasons, but I want to start with, I appreciate their effort to get cars off the street, and I think that's generally something that we should work to support. And I have no problem with the special permit for the attached garage. We approved one in the house next to this not that long ago. So I think, you know, there's definitely precedent for that in this neighborhood. But I think just on a practical level, I have difficulty approving the plans because it's, Commissioner Say was not the only one who had difficulty reading them. And the plans themselves need to be clear, but that's more of an administrative issue. But like Commissioner Loftus was saying, I'm having trouble making findings for the variance, particularly about the uniqueness of the lot, because I think this lot is a very large lot. The garage, and I think there needs to be more study of what other options there are, either moving the garage forward or moving it back. And I think the bar for finding something unique about the lot that would support the variance request is really high, and I don't think it's been met yet. So the way the application's written now, I can't support it.
Commissioner Camerado?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners. I don't think I could support this project or not the variance at this time and place. I think what we need to do is do a little bit more study and see where, if the garage could move forward or backwards, as Commissioner Sargent also discussed. I think that it is a tight street, and I can totally appreciate the neighbors wanting to get the cars off the street, but I think we need to have a little bit more study on this item before moving forward.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Similar. I do appreciate the effort to use the garage. I live on a busy street too, and struggle with the cars. So I do appreciate your effort to do that. But I would probably be more supportive if the neighbor wasn't, speaking up and being opposed as well. So I would like to see a little bit more study on how you might modify the mudroom to get some width and or push the garage a little further back so that you're not encroaching in on that setback. Because I mean, you're also adding in the ADU as well. So I think that more study would be a good thing. Thank you.
And I agree with some of my fellow commissioners here that I can support the special permit for the attached garage that currently exists, but I can't see myself supporting the side setback variance. One of the reasons is that that garage is serving for a number of reasons. There's storage in there. There is waste receptacles are there, and I'm concerned that once you park in that garage as well, that it'll be even more difficult to get some of the other functions that are happening in the garage out to the locations that they need to be, whether it's pulling out the garbage cans or getting access to other items that are being stored in the garage. Additionally, when I was meeting with the homeowner, he gave me an approximate dimension of the current garage door opening, and I don't see it on the plans. I see a 9'10" dimension somewhere in the garage, but the garage opening right now appears to be over 9 feet wide, and that seems to be ample for a car to be able to park inside. Maybe you can't open your side doors to 90 degrees, but you can certainly park in there if you wanted to and still be able to get in and out of the garage. I mean, my own garage is narrower than that, and I'm able to park my car inside there and open doors with an SUV and with any car that we've had. And so for those reasons, I can't support it, but I do appreciate the approach to try to use off-street parking. I mean, the driveway is long. You can certainly park on the driveway, but for covered parking, I feel that there is covered parking that will suffice. It may not be perfect, but it definitely works for their needs of having some covered parking and access to the house. So would anybody like to make a motion or state some action here? Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I'll move we continue the project.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Camerado. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, may we go to a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus, Commissioner Loftus, you're muted.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis,
Yay.
Commissioner Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 5-1-1-0. We will now move on to agenda item 8B, 1509.
Sorry to interrupt, and we should just note that action is not appealable.
Not appealable, sorry, yes. The action is not appealable. Moving on to agenda item number 8B, 1509 El Camino Real. For any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? All right, let the record note that all commissioners have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, an application for a new 11-unit residential condominium development at 1509 El Camino Real was approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council in 2016. Construction of the project is currently underway. With this application, the applicant is requesting approval of an amendment to the condominium permit to add additional common open space on the roof of the condominium building. The rooftop space would measure 4,000 square feet and would be located at the center of the building. The rooftop space is proposed to be situated approximately 22 feet from the front of the building and 30 feet from the rear of the building. This would position the space approximately 45 feet from the 10-foot wide alley abutting single-family residences along Balboa Avenue. The rooftop space would be enclosed with a 42-inch tall parapet along the edges of the building and would be surrounded by an 18-inch wide planter box. The originally approved project includes 2,936 square feet of common open space on the ground floor, the ground level along the right side of the rear of the building. The proposed common open space on the roof would be in addition to the previously approved common open space on the ground. No changes are proposed to the ground floor space. One question that was received from staff or towards staff is whether there had been any noise complaints from the 1226 El Camino Real project, since that has been presented as a precedent for this project. Staff checked with both code enforcement and the police department. Both confirmed that there have been no noise complaints received since that project was built in 2010. So before hearing from the applicant, I am available for any additional questions of staff.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff?
Through the chair, actually, before we do that, if I could just note something for the record. One of our commissioners, Commissioner Schmidt, lives relatively nearby to, owns property relatively nearby to this subject project. However, that property is well outside of the 500-foot radius. And given the nature of this application, the approval or not of rooftop space would not have any foreseeable economic effect on the property owned by Commissioner Schmidt. So therefore, he is allowed to continue in this. We just wanted to make a record on that.
Thank you, Attorney Kane. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project? Is the applicant in attendance?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can now. Thank you.
You. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
No, probably not. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Hear us.
Sorry about that. First time in my life I've ever been on a Zoom. Although I guess it's the first time for everything. Anyway, my name is Pat Fellows. I'm the managing partner of 1509 LLC. And we've the worldwide trend now to build up instead of single family homes with the scarcity of land. And so it's the biggest drawback I find living in a apartment building versus a home would be you don't have the enjoyment of an open space. And so I suspect sooner or later, these rooftop gardens will be mandatory on pretty much everything. So what we did is I've designed the rooftop in a fashion that it, rather than mitigate any noise to the neighbors, it eliminates it. We're well away from the neighbors, as you noticed, all the way around. That section that's to the back of the roof deck is a solar farm, which is at about 3 feet high, and there's no access in there from the deck, at least from there's a locked gate, but other than that, there is no access in there. So that whatever goes on on the deck will be within the building, as planning have suggested. And I think it's even in these times, it's nice to have somewhere to go to get away from the kids and everything else and go up on the roof. As it stands with the Burlingame and with most of the jurisdictions, the backyards are very small. Here you have an 11-unit building with a 15-foot backyard. I mean, who goes in there? Pretty much nobody. And so putting the garden on the roof was such a good deal down the road, and people love it. They go up there all the time. There's Wi-Fi up there. They sit up there and have a cup of coffee. And as the commission or the staff have just told you, in 10 years, there never has been a complaint of any kind from that roof. So that kind of eliminates that. I can't see any reason why my neighbors, if they do, and maybe they won't, would complain about it. So what I guess at this point in time, I'll conclude my remarks and wait till they see if there is any complaint, and if so, I can maybe come back to you. Other than that, I don't want to waste your time, and maybe we can move right along.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Toronis?
Yes, thank you. Pat, just a quick question. Am I correct in presuming that the previously planned barbecue with the covered trellis and the raised garden planters that are along the right side of the building, as you look at it from the street, would those still be happening down there on that ground floor?
You mean on the ground level?
On the ground level, yeah.
Yeah, the ground level. The ground level will be built per plan. Okay. Everything that. Although, let me see. We're on the ground level. Oh, I get you. Probably not with that. I'd probably just put that into landscaping. One change that came on there was, if you look at there's a vegetable garden back there. Well, the waters of the state, they made me put a bioswale in that area all the way across the back of the building and up the other side of the building. So if vegetables grow in the bioswale, we'll certainly plant them. But the bioswale takes precedent now, I would think.
So neither the raised planter nor that trellis area with the barbecue will be.
The trellis area, the barbecue, I think would be overkill. I don't see anybody would use that if they can go up to the roof. And I would just envisage just putting flowers and plantings in that area.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Sargent?
Was the rooftop deck considered in any of the earlier versions of the plan? It seems like we talked about it before the project was finally approved.
We have on the plans that you got when the commission heard the meeting, and that meeting that we approved, that you guys approved of it. It said on the plan, stamped on the plan on the roof, that we were coming back for a future roof garden. If that's what you're asking me. Yes, that verbiage was on the plan at that time.
Okay, because I just remember we discussed it, but I couldn't remember. Okay, thank you.
At that point, if I may say so, the reason we took it off, we had so many. I mean, we went around for 10 years on this building, and we had, as you probably remember, some of you guys were on that commission. Every time we came up, it was the same old thing over and over and over and over again. I think everybody, well, on your side and my side, got tired of it and just said, hey, I said, like, let's take the roof deck off. If that's another year's worth of complaining, let's deal with it later when we're not dealing with the roof deck and then throw in the stream and throw in the trees and throw in the parking. It was just a jumbled mess.
Okay, Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So over at 1226 El Camino,
Yes.
I'm just looking at some of your rooftop images for that project. It looks like the roof garden is designed where there are various alcoves or sections of that roof area, so people
Yes.
can gather in small groups and have individual gatherings in a little bit more of an intimate nature. Looking at your current plans, I see that there are maybe 4 seating areas plus an outdoor kitchen. Is there thought or plans around, again, kind of sectioning off portions of the roof deck to prevent or disincentivize people to have a giant July 4th party on the entire roof where the whole building's invited? And
well, I excuse me, I take your point. The other building was it more is the way the building configured, where the elevator came up and where the roof stacks came up, stairs came up, and kind of cut the building up kind of naturally. There would be, you know, I could see to make some kind of screening around those, maybe with flower pots. This is a kind of a different deck. There's on the other building we have had. Some of the neighbors, I think the residents, one of them or 2 of them got married up there. And as I said, the police department said there was never an issue with that. And so I don't see, I mean, there's never been a crowding of people on the roof. There are cameras in front of the back of the roof as well, so we can see what's going on up there. But I've never seen the roof overcrowded, no. And most I've ever seen on the other place was probably 18 or 20 people max.
thank you. Commissioner Loftus? Commissioner Loftus, you might be muted.
Yeah, yeah, I've got it. So I just have a couple of sort of technical questions. I want to make sure I understand some things. This is quite a very large roof deck, 4,000 square feet, and it's bound to be an assembly space. Having done roof decks before, they're always considered assembly space under the building code. Do you have some sense of what the building, the occupant load factor is for this? Is it 15 square feet per person?
I don't remember what it was, but all of that was calculated in the beginning because I figured out with some of the actors we had around our building for that 10 years, that was the issue they would come up with. Stairs are not big enough. You're adding, you know, the building has all been calced out for that. Yeah, and the roof deck is also being spec'd out from a structural standpoint.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that was the case because that's always the problem.
Yes, of course.
If it's 15 square feet per person, it's 266 people. And used to be the old building code, the stairs would not have been wide enough. That changed a few years ago. Yes. But I did want to make sure that your architect felt confident that these numbers work for the project that we're shown.
Yes, and of course too, Commissioner Loftus, we'll be, when we go through, end up with you guys, everything goes well, we'll be going to the building department, and I can assure you they're going to be checking that out.
Yeah, I always like to make sure that once it gets past us, that it doesn't have to come back to us changed. You know, that happens sometimes, and that's.
Well, I take your point. I've been doing this for 50 years now, and although I don't look a day of it, but anyway. We already calculated so that the building would be the fire considerations, the horn strobes, and they're all in where they should be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
All right, so are there any other commissioners with any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Madam Chair, I have 2 email correspondence that I can read first, and then we can hear from other members if there are.
Thank you.
The first email is signed Nina Whale. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologize if I don't. Weil, thank you. It reads, it was quite a surprise to receive the notice of an application for an amendment to the condominium permit for 1509 El Camino Real to add common open space on the roof of the building. Prior to approval for this project, the developer, Pat Fellows, met with neighbors to discuss our concerns with the plans for 1509 El Camino Real. A number of alterations by Mr. Fellows were made to accommodate our concerns so that Mr. Fellows could move his project forward without further opposition from the neighbors. One of the alterations to the plans Mr. Fellows agreed to was to eliminate the use of common open space on the roof. The objections by the neighbors included noise, nighttime lights, and impact on nocturnal animals in the riparian area and surrounding trees. We negotiated with Mr. Fellows in good faith. I therefore respectfully request that this application for amendment be denied. And that's signed Nina Weil. We have one more currently in the public comment at burlingame.org. This is signed Don Mitchell and Yan Ma. Dear Planning Commission, we live at 1512 Balboa Avenue behind the property at an angle. The homes behind the property are currently quiet in the evenings and at night. This design, which includes a fire pit and seating for 20 people, may encourage parties, noise, and music late into the evening. The owner has mentioned adding Wi-Fi to encourage its use. They have mentioned not having a place to go outdoors. The building is within walking distance to Ray Park and Village Park. I would like some restrictions on the amount of people, the times of use, and the use of music, TV, etc. I believe a roof garden was discussed before at the Planning Commission. Please go back and review those discussions and the guidance given. Thank you, Don Mitchell and Yan Ma. Those are the two emails that we have. I do not see any comments in the chat.
Okay, thank you. With that, I am going to close the public hearing.
Sorry, let me just, before you do that, if there are members who just wanted to give oral statements, those were the written ones we received, but we do want to make sure anyone else that would have had a comment. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have any comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned somewhat about the just sheer size of this and the number of people who could be up here. You know, if you think a little bit about what we've been doing with open spaces, you know, up in the air in residential neighborhoods, we've been sort of pushing to limit them to 100 square feet. And as I understand it, this is 11 units, you know, so if you said you're trying to limit the use of, for any particular unit to some small group of people, then one might naturally say something like, you know, try to limit it to 11 times 100 or 1100 square feet. And this is almost 4 times that size. It seems to me there's the potential for something going wrong here, you know, with regard to noise and privacy, despite the fact that there haven't been complaints at another location. When I drove by and looked up at the building from Balboa the other day, it seems, you know, it's pretty close. And I understand that it's 45 feet from, as I understood it, 45 feet from that back property line to the nearest occupiable space on the upper level, but 45 feet is not very far if things are noisy. So I'm very uneasy about the size of this and the potential for things to not go well in that neighborhood.
Commissioner Camerado?
I agree with Commissioner Loftus. So I think we've kind of made a precedence of not having these big balconies off single family homes. And I think that this particular roof deck is too large for the area. I worry about the light. I worry about the noise for the neighbors. I can see possibly doing something much smaller and moving it forward and away from the back of the property a little bit. So the other thing, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a bathroom up there, maybe not having a restroom up there where people then can go to their own properties and go to the restroom might be an option. I'm not sure, but that's something that I wanted to take note of.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, so let me start with a question of staff. And there was an environmental impact report on this project. Was the rooftop deck studied? And if not, I have no idea what's involved in this. And so, I mean, is it possible to still study it?
There was a initial study, mitigated negative declaration, and I can't recall if it included the roof deck or not. We could look into whether that's a significant enough change to the project to warrant amending that report. But I don't recall offhand whether the deck itself was, or possibility of a deck was considered.
Okay, thank you. So I looked at the 1226 El Camino video, and this would be a beautiful amenity for this project. I mean, it would be an incredible benefit for the owners of the condominiums. But like my fellow commissioners, I'm really concerned that that benefit and amenity not be at the expense of the neighbors. And so we've had a lot of discomfort as a commission about these kind of spaces. And maybe looking at the and I think it would be nice if we could have some kind of objective study of it, because just subjectively it makes me very uncomfortable.
Commissioner Taronis.
Thank you. I agree with other commissioners. Having sat through all of the various hearings for this project before, I can't disagree with fellows that there were a confluence of various different issues that the applicant was having to deal with. But I can't comfortably then, sort of take the stance that we put all of those aside and now we're going to take up this issue and it's any simpler than it was then. I think that the context is different, though not physically far from 1226 El Camino. I think the context is different. That project there is in the midst of a different type of neighborhood in terms of what's surrounding the other multifamily projects, the other taller structures, et cetera. This project had a very sensitive context, particularly with the single family residences that, we're very concerned about this project. And so I can't comfortably just say, okay, now we've gotten past all those things and now this is okay. There might be some recrafting of the space or the design to make it less of a possible intrusion. But as Commissioner Loftus was saying, I can't comfortably say that a 4,000 square foot assembly space up on that roof would not have an impact on the adjacent neighbors at this point. Thank you.
Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I would agree with my fellow commissioners, but I would also encourage the applicant to not eliminate the ground level outdoor space because I think people would use it and it would split this up a little bit so that the demand wouldn't be wholly on the roof. I like the idea, but I just think that the roof deck is a little bit too large.
Commissioner Schmidt.
I agree that the deck might be a little large, but maybe that gives opportunity for designing in a little bit more up there with barriers and or maybe landscaping that would maybe push noise forward towards El Camino rather than backwards towards Balboa. I mean, we have a basic, furniture layout there, but not a whole lot more detail that, is saying, hey, let's put in some landscaping or trees or something that, not trees, but landscaping that would help mitigate that noise going backwards. Because I actually think that, the barbecue area down on the ground floor has just as much opportunity for abuse of noise and time as you would have on the roof. So I think that there's maybe some ways to design that in and maybe be able to make that little bit more palatable for the neighbors. I was not part of those previous discussions, so I can't really say, that they're wrong or anything. And I would hate to change that dialogue.
And I just want to say that I agree with my fellow commissioners and I don't have anything new to add to the conversation. So commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Sargent?
I'll move we continue the project.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Before you go to a vote, I'm sorry, through the chair, before you go to a vote on that, let's check with the project and make sure that they are open to a continuance and a potential redesign, or that they don't rather have a decision tonight that they can then appeal.
Okay, so can applicant please chime in here?
Well, a couple of things before we get to that. I would say we have a homeowners association and it has rules and regulations that for many people can be on the roof. I would say as regards putting a barbecue and so forth down on the ground is going to be a lot more noisier than one up on the roof. Don't forget we're 44, 45 feet.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fellows, I hate to interrupt you, but really the point of reopening was just to ask you if you'd be open to the continuance, or if you want what sounds like might be a negative decision that you could then appeal.
And so what are my options?
So the question is that there's a motion on the table right now to continue this, to allow you to have a further dialogue with the commission about what design might work here. So you can either, the reason I asked the chair to allow this is to see if you're open to doing that, or if you want some finality tonight that would thereby allow you to have something to appeal to the council. If you wanted to do that, then you could ask for a final decision, yay or nay, or you can continue the conversation. So the question is, are you open to the continuance?
Kathleen, how long would it take to get back on the calendar?
I think that has a lot to do with how quickly you could turn around, plans or what conversations you need to have. So that's something that you would need to explore with staff, but it needn't be a significant delay, is my impression, given that the commission has looked at this.
And when you say conversations, are you suggesting that I can have individual conversations with the commissioners, or must it always be under this format?
You and I can talk about this offline, perhaps. Under the Brown Act, which is our open meeting law, you are allowed to have individual conversations. You just have to make sure not to transmit information from one to the other. Yes. But that's something that we can help you make sure that that's appropriate under our open meeting laws.
So in other words, I could have conversations with the commissioners on an individual basis, as long as I don't carry the conversation from one to the other. Is that what you're saying?
As long as you don't convey what one commissioner thought to another commissioner, yes. And that's if the commissioners are able to have those conversations, or you might be able to transmit information. Anyway, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just,
yes.
Before they voted on the continuance, I wanted to make sure that you were open to that, given the long history that this project has.
Oh yes, hopefully it's not another 10 years, but yeah, I guess we'll do the
continuance.
Continuance, yes.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, through the chair.
Thank you. So with that, we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, and I believe seconded by Commissioner Loftus. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado?
Aye.
Commissioner Gall?
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus?
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis?
Aye.
And Chair Saig.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. And this action is not appealable. Moving on to agenda item number 8C, 1766 El Camino Real. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes. There are two parts to this application. The first is for the development project and the associated environmental review. The second part is for a code amendment to change the parking ratio for office land uses in the North Burlingame mixed-use district. Both items may be reviewed together in one hearing. In the public comments, should members of the public want to address both issues, they should address both, but make clear what part of the application is being addressed, whether it's the development project, the environmental review, or the code amendment. For this item, the applicant has a presentation prepared, so I will keep my presentation short. The commission has reviewed this item twice as a study item, first on September 23rd, 2019, and then again on October 28th, 2019. The staff report outlines changes that have been made to the application between those times and now. And as mentioned, the applicant has a presentation prepared. So I'll stop there and jump directly to questions of staff. Also with us this evening to answer questions are representatives of ICF, which prepared the environmental review, Hexagon, which prepared the traffic impact analysis. Also, senior planner Catherine Keelan is in attendance if we need any guidance on particulars. And at this point, we would move to the applicant's presentation. But first, we can take questions for staff, for ICF, or for Hexagon.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
I am,
Yes,
I'm Mario Musi. That was my architect, Bill Higgins, who I told would be presenting the project on my behalf, but I wanted to just reintroduce myself. I am the applicant. My name's Mario Musi. Thank you.
Thank you.
yes, and I'm Bill Higgins, the architect from Smith Group for this project, and it's good to see the commission again, and glad to see you're all well. We do have a slide presentation that if Ruben can start full screen. So it's get that full screen. Yeah, so as the report said, we had 2 sessions with you last fall, and we learned a lot from each of those sessions. And what we tried to do in this succinct presentation is to update you on the design and how we incorporated most of those comments into this project. Next slide. This is totally an integrated mixed-use project on El Camino, with residential, 2 levels of residential on top of 4 levels of office, on top of a ground level of commercial and lobbies, and 2 levels of below grade parking, and yielding about 148,000 square feet of office, about 7,500 square feet of retail, and 60 units of housing. And next slide. Next. And just to briefly reorient you, this site is at the corner of Truesdale and El Camino, and it's actually off a frontage road that flanks El Camino. But it's a corner site, very important site, and we had that discussion the last 2 sessions about the importance of this site coming from Millbrae. And you can see the character of the current site is a very low 2-story building that's partly vacant at this time. Next slide. One of the interesting things, though, is that this is part of the North Burlingame zoning area, and I think what's significant is there are some fairly, sort of say mediocre buildings, but practical buildings. But across the street on Burlingame, on El Camino, is the Mills Peninsula Medical Center, which is a new addition to North Burlingame. And we think a significant addition, which we feel relates to the whole strength and energy of what's happening in the North Burlingame area, and that our building can contribute to this corridor. Next slide. So just to orient you, if you're looking at a site plan, at the corner of El Camino and Truesdale, and we're adjacent to the Burlingame Police Station. What's interesting about our site is that in addition to having this frontage on the corner, on these two corners, is that we also have access to the property from what we call a panhandle part of the property to California Drive, which allows us to have access to our parking. So we have access to the parking from California Drive at a lower level because the site slopes about 13 feet from El Camino to California Drive. And then we have access to the parking, which is below grade, on the southwest corner of our site with a ramp system that goes down to parking. The other significant feature is that, as I showed you in the section, we're putting housing on top of office. So the housing, to be an efficient housing component, it's more of a U-shape, double-loaded corridor layout, which gives you views in different directions. And the transition, we have the opportunity of a activity deck for the residents of the project at a higher level, which allows them views to the bay and towards the airport towards the east. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we looked at and we talked to you on those last two occasions was looking at some of the key features that we think would make this a building a significant addition on El Camino. And I would just like to highlight a few of those. One is we heard you to like strengthen and anchor and frame the corner of the building because its presence is could be very strong coming from Millbrae, and it establishes this building as a corner building and not just a frontal building. The other aspect was we wanted to unify the building mass of, since it's a long building, 300 feet long, we use these building mass breaks, articulated mass breaks to break up that mass. But at the same time, we wanted to unify it. So we introduced, as you'll see in the 3D modeling, a grand canopy, which locks the buildings both vertically and horizontally. And then the other thing is we wanted to simplify the glazing system. So we have a pattern of textured punched openings that frame the sides of the building, but open to a more transparent curtain wall system, both on the east side facing the bay, and then also towards El Camino. Next slide, please. So here you can see that composition. Just diagrammatically, we just want to keep the language very simple. We have a corner that we kind of anchor and frame the corner architecturally with the punch openings and a reveal a more transparent corner. The grand canopy is sort of this grand gesture which unifies both horizontally, locking two edges of the building together, and then also it identifies the office zone from the residential zone, and picks up a little bit of the language of the Mills Peninsula property across the street. Then thirdly, we wanted to not just isolate the residential, even though it's on the top two floors, we want to integrate it and layer it in to the composition. So it's a very compositional design. Next slide. And then subtly layering in that, like I say, is the residential does have its own unique distinct pattern in that it's smaller units, it's not grand office space. So it does want to read as a residential element at the top of the building. So we use just a subtle layering where we segregate it and separate it slightly with a horizontal edge. And then also in response to one of your other comments was we wanted to reinforce the pedestrian experience at that corner. So we enlarged and expanded that pedestrian canopy as it turns the corner to really announce that this is an important corner, and it's a corner to be addressed and draw you to the entry at the canopy zone. Next slide. And so here you can see the articulation of that. So the anchoring and framing of the corner is done by these textured punch openings, which are much stronger than they were before. And we layer that with some horizontal edges so you can read the office zone and then you could read the residential zone. It is almost like the traditional base, middle, and top. And then the horizontal character of the angled canopy locks the two sides together and also creates an identity for the building and an address location at the lobby. Next slide. So if you zoom in a little bit on that, you can see how the canopy is articulated. It acts as an organizing element, but at the same time, we didn't want it to be too heavy. So we introduced these trellis-like elements at the top and the bottom to bring natural light to play against the walls of the office zone. It also creates an opportunity for grand signage to identify the building and give it a branding. And then you can see in the office zone itself, we have these deep balconies, which are part of the breakout idea. This is even pre-COVID, that we wanted to be able to have spaces that office workers can enjoy the outdoors and the open space. Next slide. And then looking a little bit from the from the south, another bird's eye, you can start to see how that composition works, where we anchor the corner on the left, but then we create some horizontal energy and locking the right corner together with the main body of the building. And we simplified some of these other ledge elements that we had, and we bring down the color of the residential down to the ground, so you can feel that the residential is integrated with the office zone itself. Next slide. And then just as we go around the building, this is the side facing the police station. And this is where we have our residential drop-off. And it'll have a modest canopy to announce the entry. And you can see here where we have the upper amenity deck for the residents, also facing towards the east. And also this identifies the more transparent edges or ends of the building. Next slide. And so what we're looking at is a building that, as I mentioned, is very contemporary. We think it responds very well to the notion that it's trying to do some things, but very simply anchor the corner, create some contemporary expression on the facade. If you go to the next slide, I'll take a couple of those trees away, so you can see that it does announce that it's part of the North Burlingame mixed-use zone, a contemporary building, and the identity as a mixed-use building is echoed in both the layering as we go vertically, and then also as we use the canopy to create and announce connection horizontally. And next slide is another rendering from the other side. If you go one more slide, we'll take a tree away just so you can see it more clearly. So this gives it the opportunity to identify the building, announce where the lobby is. That's where the drop-off is going to be, announced with signage. And like I say, a very compositional building, but we tried to keep the moves minimal and more simply in a more simple glazing system. Next slide. We have just a few more as we turn the corner. You come around towards Truesdale, and you're elevated slightly to go up to this drop-off. But the pedestrian can move freely at grade through a covered canopy, as well as an arcade element to the residential lobby. And you can see the separation wall between us and the police station. Next slide. And then an aerial view of the drop-off again from another angle, just to give you a sense of how that's organized. And we've vetted the turnaround with the fire department on getting a fire truck up at that level and be able to turn around. And again, you can see the location of the upper amenity deck for residents. And next slide. So in terms of materials, like I mentioned, we wanted to use materials that sort of echoed this concept of reinforcing the corner with some strong anchoring elements, textured punch openings for the precast concrete, and sort of two tones. We wanted to create just a subtle layering, so we have a stronger color of more of an almond color as the main frame, and transitioning to a softer gray, and then at the top, a lighter white precast, as you can see in the sort of in the sample of the image below. And then curtain wall, or a glazing system that would simulate curtain wall for the primary body of the office building. And then the storefronts, we would use an almond stone tile, again, to echo that color combination and create enough transparency for the ground level retail commercial space. And so the next two slides are, we do have a materials board, but we can't bring it to you in each of your living rooms or offices. So we have a virtual image board, but we do have a physical one to sort of show the color palette for the precast and the stone elements. And then on the glazing on the next slide, the transparency of the glass, we're looking at a sort of a tinted optic gray glass by PPG, which has good transparency, but good thermal qualities, and then spandrel glass to sort of echo that color tone. Then the next slide is on the landscape. We do have with us tonight John Martin from RHAA to join if there's any questions, but for the sake of time, I will walk you through some of the landscape elements. One of the key things was it's not just a building with one side. We are treating each street edge individually and collectively linking them together. One thing to note, on the east side of the building, we have a little dog park above the panhandle area. We do have some modest landscaping at the residential drop-off. But on the main feature is, if you go to the next slide,
Mr. Higgins, may I interrupt for just 1 second?
Sure.
Thank you for this thorough presentation. It's been about 15 minutes, and most of the commission has seen this presentation a couple of times before. So we would appreciate if you could just wrap it up in a couple of minutes, please.
Yes. Okay. Well, I have about 3 more slides. And so basically the plaza, which is designed to be an extension of the office space as a drop-off collecting area, a spill-out area for cafes, a kiss and ride area, has benches, has bike racks, has planters, but we also acknowledge the street tree requirements on both Truesdale and on El Camino. If you go to the next slide. And so see, there's some of the images for the for what we call in the plaza, which is a contribution to that part of Burlingame. This one view looking towards the office entry. And then next slide. This is looking actually coming from the south. You're right at near the office entry with the canopy above, and you can start to see the combination of the street trees and the planting material and built-in benches and other street furniture. And then finally, these are some of the images which you've seen before, some of the character images that reflect the elements that we're going to incorporate at the plaza. And then the next slide is there was some interest in what would happen at the roof deck. And one of the things here, the roof deck is, we screened part of it. The actual area has been reduced by about 1/3 to provide plant screening to the individual units nearby. And we created these 2 sort of kiosk kind of buildings to act as amenity spaces and provide some functions at this level. And the next slide also shows some of the characteristics of what some of those elements could be, trying to be transparent, but also provide cover and some activity areas for residents to gather. So I think the next slide is the end of our brief presentation, and we appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, I have a question about the horizontal and vertical fin construction. What are you planning to make that out of?
The horizontal slab edges that are part on the turning the corner probably would be the continuation of a post-tension slab, or it could be precast, but that probably lends itself more efficiently to a concrete slab edge. Whereas the grand canopy, we have not had a structural engineer structure it yet. It could be concrete, but I would prefer to see it more as an aluminum metal clad system to tie it in to the rest of the curtain wall system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I had I don't know if you covered it, but what is the eave material of that pedestrian corner?
It would be, as I just mentioned with the Commissioner Schmidt,
I'm sorry.
probably, it'd be the underside of a concrete slab edge painted and smooth, ground smooth and painted. And of course, we'd be looking at maybe introducing light fixtures, down lights into that slab.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Taronis?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, as you said, Commissioner, our Chair say, we've seen the presentation several times, and having seen the project several times, please don't interpret at least my lack of questions as lack of interest. I appreciate the presentation, and the questions that I had previously have been answered, so thank you.
All right, so seeing there are no other commissioners' comments, I'm going to see if there's anybody in the public who would like to speak on this item.
Hi there, my name is Mark Kate, and I'm a resident of Burlingame and an occupant of the El Camino corridor. I have a few comments or questions or challenges.
Please go ahead, thank you.
So I'll be brief and to the point. First of all, I know Smith Group very well, and I applaud them. It's a great building. It's great architecture. I think it's a beautiful building. However, I think it's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and challenging both the negative deck and the planning application or addressing those issues. I think the density of this project, if not doubles, quadruples what's going on this corner now. It's a 2-story or maybe a 1-story building that has offices, and now we're going to add many, many features to it. I think the massing of the building on this corner is too much. I think the comments by the architect are misplaced. I know you referenced the healthcare center across the street, but if you look across the street, it's actually a bus stop in front of a parking garage in front of the hospital, which is further down the street. I think this thing would stick out extremely obnoxiously on this corner. The third item I'd like to raise is the fact that we're adding 60 units of residential, and the density of that residential on this acreage, I think is troubling, if not objectionable. The traffic on this frontage road, if you've not been down this road, it's a one-way street that goes from south to north, and it's a very cumbersome and complicated. I run, walk, and drive this area every day of the week, and it's very challenging for the people that live there. To add this amount of density, this amount of traffic, I think would be very challenging. And I've not studied the traffic report, but I would challenge that as how that's going to be handled. The fact that you're adding additional retail to a spot that probably cannot support retail is very troubling to me. I don't think 60 units, if it does get approved, can support that. And I don't see that as a destination spot, since you have retail across the street that is struggling right now. The last item I want to add, and it's very pragmatic, is the parking. You have 2 skilled nursing facilities, one on the north side of Truesdale and one on California Boulevard next to the townhome project. Both of those facilities park on the lots that are going to be used by this facility, and you're now eliminating that parking. So those people that go to work and live there, or work there rather, are going to have to park somewhere, and that's going to further congest this neighborhood and make it less desirable and less habitable for the people that are already there. That includes the residents to the south, the occupants of the townhomes, and the people that work at those skilled nursing centers. And those are my brief but concise comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I'd like to just make a couple of comments. My name is Jadine Wong, and I'm one of the owners of one of the townhomes at 1755 California Drive, which is adjacent to that parking panhandle. I regret that I wasn't at the prior 2 meetings, but when I did learn about this project and review some of the plans, my concerns are that, as the prior person said, this is quite a large building and really changes the whole atmosphere. I know we're the only townhomes, we're the only residences right here, but this is my home. These are our homes, and I feel like such a large building will impact the environment, it'll impact the view, it's going to impact the light. The sun goes down in that direction and it'll be significantly darker in this area to have a 7-story building so close to our homes. And also to speak to the density, the people, and the parking. I think we've already had to limit our parking because of the bicycles on the street here. We have very, very limited parking. And so often our guests have to go down the street, around the corner. And so this will further impact the parking. I feel like this is a building that's probably better suited to a more downtown area where there are more people walking around. It feels more like a city type of a building, and not in this area, which is kind of a combination of residential. There are some medical buildings, but it seems more like an urban building, and it doesn't really seem to belong right in this neighborhood.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Do we have any emails?
There are no emails, and let me just check the chat. No chats.
All right then. I will then close the public hearing with that. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Loftus? Commissioner Loftus, I think you're muted.
Well, got a recurring problem. I start out by just, I guess, thinking out loud about the comments made by the couple of speakers, public speakers. I mean, this is an area that we identified as a high density area when the general plan was revised in the last 2 years. So I guess I'm a little bit surprised that folks see this as a spot where this shouldn't be happening, because the several of us who were involved in that thought, in fact, this is exactly the kind of thing that ought to be happening in this spot. So we have a difference of opinion here, I think. Will it change the neighborhood? Yes, that's the point. So, you know, I wanted to address that to begin with. I think that the design team has done a really good job of taking care of the most important things they need to take care of with respect to the building. Once, if our premise is right, that this is the kind of thing that belongs there. If you don't believe that, then nothing's right with this building except that it looks good, I guess, perhaps. But I think the design team has done a really good job of taking care of, you know, basic fundamental urban design issues. In a funny sort of location, this frontage road is a bizarre thing to have in that location anyway, but there's nothing we can do about it, as I understand. So it's something that probably shouldn't be there, that can't be undone. And I gather that it has to do with El Camino being a state road, but I'm not exactly sure how it came about, what the history of it is, and why it can't be undone. So we're putting a building on a very small road that you know, perhaps this building really belongs right on, sitting directly on El Camino, but that's not a possibility. But I think that the building does a good job of anchoring the corner, as it should. You know, anchoring the corner on a small road and a slightly larger road. I think it's got good basic urban design structure, base, middle, top. I think it's well articulated. It's much more compelling than the slightly arced front first version of it was, because that seemed sort of frivolous and meaningless in that situation before. So it's a good solid building. I do have to say that I still don't buy the so-called grand canopy. I don't, you know, as architecture trying to speak to the building on the other side of the street, the medical center, I think that it's talking to the most frivolous part of that medical center building. So I don't think you gain anything from that, but it's not a deal killer. I think it's the Cadillac fins are doing nothing for me. The building doesn't need them. They seem frivolous, like the flying pieces of the building adjacent across the street seem frivolous. I will say, just at the end, someone asked a question about the slab edges, the horizontal fins. I would urge you not to consider making that an extension of the concrete slab. You'll get no thermal break there, and you'll have all sorts of waterproofing details. So waterproofing issues if you do that. So that's probably going to be break metal as well, a Luca bond or something like that. I think it's a very nice building. It's good, solid urban design with a few frivolous pieces that I can live with.
Commissioner Torrones?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Loftus. Having gone through the several year-long process of the update to the general plan and looking at various locations where we need to encourage and allow for increased densities, I can find support for this application. I can accept the findings in the mitigated negative declaration and the other entitlements. And we previously vetted the amendments to the office parking regulations, looked at various different numbers that might work. And I think we've crafted that to the point where it's ready to move forward to the council as well. Thank you.
Would you like to make that a motion?
Okay, I'll make that a motion to approve the mitigated negative declaration, the design review, the conditional use permit, and zoning amendment for the 7-story mixed use development, and make that recommendation to council.
I would second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Torrones, seconded by Commissioner Loftus. Is there any discussion on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Now I'm muted. Commissioner Camarado.
Aye.
Commissioner Gull.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones. And Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing. It must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, including noticing costs. Congratulations.
Actually, I apologize. We the full project will go to the City Council because it does have a code amendment. So I apologize. We should have got the notes straightened out ahead of time, but it will go to the City Council at a later date.
Thank you. Still, congratulations for getting through the Planning Commission. Okay, so we will move on to agenda item 9A. We're moving on to design review items now. Item 9A, 1249 Laguna Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Commissioner Torrones?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a clarification in case anybody is aware of where our office is located, as I'm sure everybody in Burlingame is aware. We are down the street from this project, but I just want to clarify and make sure that everybody's aware. We do not actually own this property. This is just where our business is located. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, Commissioner Camarado, we know that you are recusing from this item. Is that what you wanted to remind us?
That is correct. I'll be recusing since I own a property within 500 feet of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant proposes to replace the existing one-story house and detached garage at 1249 Laguna Avenue with a new two-story single-family dwelling and detached garage. There are no existing protected size trees on the project site. The applicant is proposing to plant 4 new 24-inch box trees at the front and rear of the property. In summary, the applicant is requesting design review for a two-story single-family dwelling and detached garage. The applicant is online to answer questions from the commission, but first I'm available for questions of staff.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please step forward, state your name and anything you'd like to add about the project?
Okay, this is Jerry Deal. Is anybody there in the audience?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, are the owners of the property in the audience?
I am here, yes.
Okay, because I'm up in Oregon right now.
At least you're in the same time
On
zone.
Zoom. Yes. Okay, basically the clients who want to live in Burlingame, we originally took a look at the existing house doing a remodel, and unfortunately sometimes the floor plan is in such bad shape that the amount of work that it's going to take to get it to be up to modern day standards is too much work. So we decided to build a new house, which I believe fits in well with that street, Laguna. And before I go too far, I want to welcome John Schmidt to the Planning Commission. I have not talked to you before. That's really all I've got. I can answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Taronis?
Just one simple one. Jerry, I don't know, have you or the property owners had a chance to talk to the adjacent neighbor at 1243 Laguna about the removal of the garage and the construction of the new, I know it looks like there's existing mature landscaping that's kind of overgrown the existing side of that garage, not that can't be removed, but have you had a chance to talk to that neighbor, at least in terms of?
I personally have not. If the owner is there, he could address that.
Yeah, they're in favor of it. The vines on the side of the garage have basically overgrown onto theirs. We had to trim down a tree that was kind of behind our garage that had crept over and bothered the house over on the Paloma side, and now the vines continue to grow over onto the neighbor at 1243. So they're 1245, I think, actually. We're 1249, they're 1245. So,
okay.
But yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then there's just you'll have to work through the logistics of taking down the garage, what fencing gets temporarily put, but it sounds like you're in communication with them. Thank you.
Commissioner Sargent?
Actually, I don't have a question. Sorry.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah. Hi, Jerry.
Hey,
so
Mike.
The hardy plank siding that you're proposing is the cedar mill. Is that the one with the raised grain on it?
Yes.
And is there a reason for that? Yeah, I'll be quite frank. I've been vocal about my opposition to hardy plank siding, and that one in particular, I think, looks as fake as they come. So that's the direction of my question. Is there a reason for that one, or not?
Well, the raised part gives a little bit of a shadow line. Not an awful lot, but it does give some character to the board as opposed to just a flat board.
Mm-hmm. And okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Did we receive any emails?
We have not received any emails on this item, and I do not believe we have any chats either.
Okay. And seeing that there are no other public comments, I will close the public hearing. Comments? Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I think this is a really nice project. I think it fits in well with the neighborhood. I think it, I can make the findings for the design review. So I think this would be a good candidate for the consent calendar.
Commissioner Schmidt?
I agree. It is a good looking project and I appreciate that the drawings really, did a great job at answering all the questions. It was very clear and easy to read. Thanks.
Commissioner Torrones?
Thank you. I agree in terms of the massing, in terms of the character and the detailing. I do have the same question as Commissioner Gall in terms of that hardy siding. I've had an opportunity to look closely at some of that material recently. And I do have to say that that cedar mill material, it does look pretty fake. So I would encourage, Jerry, I would encourage you to talk closely with the applicants, the homeowners, and make sure they fully understand what they're getting. I can't hard and fast refuse, deny the project because of that, but I would just want to make sure that the homeowners understand what they're getting in terms of that look. Thank you.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, well, that's getting back to my comment. As I said before, I've been from the get-go opposed to hardy siding. I think it in its entirety, the whole product line to me looks like it's commercial and it looks cheaper to me. However, we've approved a number of projects with hardy siding, but I would, as Commissioner Torrones said, I would encourage you to find a project or a house that's been built with that, so that the property owner sees what they're getting, and see if you can find some houses where this stuff has been put on. That I think the misnomer about it is that it's maintenance free, and it really is not. If you let it sit in the sun, and there's a project on Cappuccino in the same block that had hardy siding, and I think we did it 4 or 5 years ago, and it's already weathering terribly. The seams are coming open, and you can see all the patch marks and the putty marks and where it's been touched up or was touched up because it was a pre-painted product. I'm just not impressed with the product, but I'm not going to let it stop the project at this point.
Jerry, I think we've closed the public hearing.
Yes, you have. I just wanted to iterate that I'm willing to look at a different siding.
Thank you.
And hopefully I don't have to go back with an FYI.
Thank you. Commissioner Sargent, or let's see, Commissioner Sargent, you spoke earlier.
Well, I was going to make a motion.
Okay. Commissioner Loftus, you have something to say before Commissioner Sargent makes a motion?
No, I was going to make the motion, but just to pick up where he dropped off, but let him do it.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sargent.
I move we bring this back on the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion.
Commissioner Torrones second that.
Oh, who was the second? I'm sorry. Commissioner Torrones? Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Torrones. Any discussion on the motion?
The only comment I'd make on the motion is to the applicant that he asked about changing the siding without having to bring it back on the FYI. It could still come back with when it comes back for consideration on the consent calendar with a different siding if they choose to go that route.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones. And Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-1-0. And is this not appealable? This is not no.
It's not appealable.
There's no action.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will move on to agenda item number 10, commissioners' reports. There are no commissioners' reports tonight, so we'll move on to agenda item number 11, directors' reports.
We do not have any FYIs or such in this meeting. Just to give a update on the last City Council meeting, a couple of items of interest. The accessory dwelling unit ordinance was adopted officially, so that will go into effect. Also, the REACH codes, which is the building electrification building codes, were also adopted. They still need to go through a couple more hoops through the state review, but are basically on their way towards being implemented as well. And then the last item, which was really the longest discussion item of the meeting, if any of you were either watching or reading about it in the paper, there was quite a lot of discussion over the various street closure with Burlingame Avenue and Broadway, and then trying to accommodate personal services such as hair salons and barbers and nail salons. And the kind of conclusion of that is that on Burlingame Avenue, we're moving towards parklets, which are basically when the parking space becomes a more permanent week-long space for outdoor dining that can be set up. It could also be under certain circumstances used for these personal services such as the nail salons and the barbers and such, provided there's enough distance between the restaurants and those services. And the advantage is that, it's kind of a pros and cons. The advantage of the parklets is it is there all week long. Also, I think there had been some concerns that the street closure had become an event, which certainly we're all eager to go to events. We're, starving for, but we're also finding that with COVID, we need to take some responsibility and really try not to encourage a lot of social gatherings. So I think the parklets is a kind of balancing act that still allows businesses to operate, but kind of keep the social gatherings a little more in control. Broadway will continue to have its street closure in that it's a more limited scale than Burlingame Avenue has been. And also it seems to not be quite the festival that Burlingame Avenue has. It's more of a local serving market and seems to be working pretty well. So it's all been kind of, iterations and experimentation, but this was kind of the next phase in trying to kind of accommodate all the different interests and find a way for our businesses to still succeed.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm very excited to be able to say the meeting. Oh, I missed it. I wanted to say the meeting adjourns at 9 p.m., but it's 9:01 p.m.
Sorry about that. I could have cut it shorter.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.